Hi, this is E.T., and this here is Bernarr Macfadden, known as the father of physical culture, or more derisively as Body Love. That was by Time magazine. Macfadden was the predecessor and mentor to the later giants of fitness and bodybuilding publishing. I'm talking about men like Bob Hoffman, Dan Lurie, Perry and Mabel Rader, who else? Robert Kennedy, Joe Weider, others. Unlike some of these publishing moguls, however, Macfadden was himself a noted physique specimen, and he was an athlete, particularly good at gymnastics and wrestling. He was also a strong guy. Although he wasn't very big, he was 5 feet 6 inches. That's 1.6 or 7 meters, and 145 pounds, about 65, 66 kilos. That weight, by the way, he maintained throughout life. Bernarr Macfadden, having first worked delivering laundry and then later in a printing shop, would go on to dominate fitness publishing, as well as publishing in other genres, many for women. That was during the first half of the 20th century. And of the many magazines that he did publish and wrote for, this one, Physical Culture, was the most famous. In 1903, it was selling over 100,000 copies a month. It lasted well over 50 years. It remains the longest living of all health and fitness magazines. Macfadden also wrote a lot of books, over 100. He did 14 books in 12 years, and that was at a time when he was pursuing other business activities that would, well, destroy the health of most of us today. Some of the books he wrote: Physical Training, that came out in 1900. Health, Beauty, and Sexuality came out in 1904. He believed, by the way, unlike medical and religious authorities of the day, that sex should be practiced for general health and not simply procreation. In 1916, another book, Brain Energy. 1928, I'm just picking out of his 100. Digestive Troubles, that was a big seller. And also Macfadden's Encyclopedia of Physical Culture. That came out in many editions. Now, all of this he did with barely any formal education. Macfadden influenced and was befriended by luminaries of business and showbiz and politics. Some of the people I'm talking about: Clark Gable, the actor; FDR, president; humorist Will Rogers; who else? Rudy Valentino, the actor. Macfadden's story reads very similar to many other successful men, not just of the fitness, but many worlds of business. Stories of abandonment, struggle, overcoming everything. Bernarr Macfadden was born in 1868, was a small Missouri town. Sickly, orphaned by age 11, farmed out to relatives. He almost died after a vaccination. That set him against organized medicine of his day. By his teens, he found a purpose, and that was pursued with maniacal intensity. His purpose? To find health, fitness, and strength. First in rigorous outdoor farm work. Later, he pushed heavy dumbbells. Taking long walks, he did that throughout life. And eating differently. He pursued a mostly, but not complete, mostly vegetarian diet. In 1899, Macfadden founded Physical Culture magazine. Now that's the beginning of his publishing empire, which would later include best-selling magazines like Liberty, True Detective, True Romance, what else? Ghost Stories, Photoplay magazine, that was about movies, He owned a newspaper, what was it, The Graphic in New York. He eventually started Sport Magazine, that was the predecessor to Sports Illustrated. He also produced short films, some of which introduced to the public such health luminaries as Charles Atlas. Macfadden founded a town. It was called Physical Culture City. If you live in a New Jersey suburb called Outcalt, you are in what used to be Physical Culture City. Macfadden opened many healthatoriums, mostly in the Northeast and Midwest. They were predecessors to today's popular spas and gymnasiums. Macfadden started a religion, Cosmotarianism, based on physical culture. I don't need to tell you that was a bad idea. He founded 2 boarding schools for orphans. The last one closed its doors in 1954. Macfadden owned and operated, how many restaurants? 20 some restaurants that were vegetarian, serving mostly raw, that means uncooked, vegetables and fruits. Macfadden followed a diet he read in a book by Sylvester Graham. Yeah, he's the one who invented the graham cracker. But Graham died early, probably of a nutrition deficiency. Macfadden was first to popularize for a large audience 2 things. One, vegetarianism, and the other, fasting. Regarding vegetarianism, Macfadden was a lacto-vegetarian. He got his protein and many other nutrients from milk products. He said of milk, and I'm quoting Macfadden, "Milk is the greatest of all diet cures. It is already scientifically combined." What he meant by that is all of the nutrients are working together synergistically to give us the most benefit. He went on to say, when you are furnished with this delectable fluid, you need not bother about any other nourishment. Regarding bread and wheat products, however, Macfadden said bread is the staff of death. About fasting, he said that is a form of self-denial that requires particular discipline, but it works for overall health. That vegetable diet and fasting are very popular today, promoted by gurus, claiming themselves to be the originators of this century-old practice. Here's a photo of Macfadden taken after a 7-day fast. That dumbbell weighs 100 pounds, about 45 kilos. Well, not everything was perfect with Macfadden. He was married 4 times. He had 8 children. They were all by his 3rd wife, Mary Williamson Macfadden. He picked her because of her genetics. She was a champion swimmer, and she won a contest that he promoted for the most perfect specimen of English womanhood. Macfadden died in 1955. He was 87. Now, this is interesting. He died of a urinary tract infection, and he treated it with fasting. He believed that could cure anything. And in many instances, fasting works. But he should have, in my opinion, treated himself effectively with penicillin. It had been around since 1943, and it is derived from a vegan acceptable mold. And my guess is he may not have lived to 150, but he would have been into the triple digits. Macfadden's legacy: campaigned against corsets, in fact, any constricting clothing, high-heeled shoes. He was against makeup, and he was one of the first to challenge laws that restrict freedom of speech. He saw prudery as a source of guilt. Guilt leads to bad health. Bad health leads to early death. He believed that sex was natural, it was good, it was wholesome. Nonetheless, in 1907, he was convicted of publishing an obscene story. That was in Physical Culture. He appealed that ruling to the Supreme Court. They denied to hear it. But in 1909, President Taft gave Macfadden a pardon. Macfadden was well ahead of his time in other ways. He was the first to create a serious interest in health and fitness. He was one of the first to campaign against medical quackery and dangerous medical practices, popular in the day, but they were either ineffective or dangerous. Here's an example: the electric belt. He helped legitimize chiropractic and osteopathy. He publicized the value of fresh fruits and exercise, in particular walking, although neither were considered all that important to overall health. A postscript. His fourth wife claimed that Bernarr Macfadden buried millions of dollars across the country. It was all in steel boxes. And some people say they saw him once leave a hotel carrying a bag and a shovel, and then returning to the hotel with the shovel. People close to Macfadden, however, say all that is not true. But there is another rumor that in 1960, a steel cartridge box was discovered on Long Island property once belonging to Macfadden, and supposedly it had $90,000 or so inside. Who knows? This is E.T. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not like it, hit the dislike. Either way, do subscribe. Oh, by the way, you can keep this channel going by promoting it to friends. Do it by word of mouth or social media.